Holistic by Sheanah.
Hi, welcome to Who You Callin' Holistic. I'm your host, Sheanah Rivers, and if you are tuning in wherever you stream your podcasts, may I suggest you actually watch the YouTube too, because it is Leo season and I am Leo seasoning. So I just need to put that out there. Go ahead and make sure you subscribe to my podcast on YouTube as well. Y'all, YouTube got a lot of money to share, and I want that. So subscribe to my YouTube page if you haven't already. I appreciate you. Before we get into this whole episode today, which you guys requested another one of these a long time ago, and I was like, I'll see what I can do. I don't know if it's going to be like a quarterly thing or like a every few weeks thing. I don't know yet, but we're going to do another Shit Sheanah Says.
That sounds like some shit Sheanah says.
So that is all kinds of information, advice, oftentimes that I'm repeating over and over for y'all to get instilled in your brains, for you to remember, for you also to, like, when you do these things to yourself or don't do these things to yourself, that you think about it for a minute and say, damn, Sheanah said that. Like, I want it to be, you know how, like, you think about Samuel L. Jackson memes and you can see his face. You can see that, like, you know, I told you so face. I want that in your brains whenever you have these moments and you're like, damn, that sounds like some shit Sheanah says. Outside of, like, the mom me in that, I do appreciate you guys sending different memes that very much represent the lifestyle that I strive to live. So when you guys send me the memes about, you know, just living my life with my titties out on the beach with a joint, those kind of things, I appreciate those, because ultimately the shit Sheanah says moments, things that I want you to remember, are here to support that lifestyle. All right. So if everybody else listening has those dreams as well, you aspire to be on the beach with your titties out, or maybe just not on a beach. Maybe you're in a meadow. I don't know. I don't know your life. I don't know what you like, but whatever it is, I hope your titties are out with it and you're enjoying yourself. So before we get into all the shit Sheanah says, let me go over some additional house rules as we're getting into the swing of things in here. A lot of my content is evergreen, so make sure you pay attention to the show notes whenever you're listening. Pay attention to the show notes. You'll see announcements in there. You'll see updated events. You'll see the things that I'm working on. A lot of people ask me, you know, to keep them in the loop for things, but if they're not on the email list, or if they're not on my broadcast channel on Instagram, which I feel like that's going to be my most up-to-date information on the things I'm working on. So go ahead and join my broadcast channel on Instagram. It's Sheanah Channel, because that makes sense. But that'll have my most up-to-date information on the things that I'm working on. Outside of that, you've got to join my email list. You've got to pay attention to the show notes. Like, that's all I can say about that. Pay attention to those. I do have Reiki classes coming up. I have other events I'm working on. I was actually discussing with Neek in the studio that I want to work on a creative something in here. So look out for information on that, because there are things in the works, but the show notes will always be up to date with that information if you're not already following me with my email list, or if you're not on my broadcast channel. So show notes always. I'll keep those updated, if anything. Now, let's get into shit Sheanah says. This is a whole episode of the advice that I repeat often, the advice that I give my clients, the advice that I'm shaking my head at because I read myself with it too, more often than not. But these are the things that have helped me over the years that I've been working on myself. These are the things that I've had to develop into my routines and self-care. But we'll get into all of that. So let's get into shit Sheanah says.
That sounds like some shit Sheanah says.
You know, at the end of every episode, I say, remember to meditate and hydrate. Every single episode. So, meditation. It's going to look different for everybody. I think a lot of people think that meditation requires, you know, closing your eyes and sitting in complete silence. And that's not always the case. Our minds are going to do what they want to do. And you do have to get comfortable with the thoughts that are coming up throughout the meditation, but it's also not acting on those thoughts. Meditation is being the observer of your thoughts. And then by becoming more of an observer of your thoughts, you can observe how you move throughout the day, the decisions you're making, and you can make wiser, more intentional decisions because you're more of an observer instead of the reactor within the video game, as I mentioned the last time. And, I've adjusted my meditation things all the time because I need to switch it up from time to time. Sometimes it's healing frequencies. I love to share the healing frequencies that I do a lot of my Reiki sessions with, or just the healing frequencies that I'm attracted to during my meditation sessions. I know one of my favorites is 963. There's also 528, which is the one that I often play when I do Reiki. There's so many different healing frequencies. You can find a shit ton on YouTube. You can find them on the streaming platforms you're probably listening to the podcast on. Get into the healing frequencies, see what you like, see what you don't like. And I know for me, I even have some Spotify playlists that let me put these down, that somebody mentioned, and she said that it really helped her fall asleep. So I post them on my Instagram stories often, but there's like a Reiki playlist, and it's got all kinds of healing frequencies, and it's infused with Reiki. So if you are attracted to those things, go on Spotify and look for them. My name is attached to them, so Sheanah Rivers is not hard to find on Spotify. And what other meditations have I been into? Lately, another one, or not even lately, one of them that I discovered was really diving into some of the different waves available, what kind of state you want to achieve. So, there's like alpha, beta, gamma waves. Look into those meditations as well, because those offer different value and benefits for what your goal is. So I know for alpha meditations, those are good for developing new beliefs. And I've been into those more recently. But in saying that, there's other guided meditations that I've been into as well. So a lot of those have been on YouTube. But I mentioned in the other Shit Sheanah Says episode that a lot of those guided meditations, they have to have a certain voice. It has to have a certain sound to it for me to actually pay attention and want to listen to it. Otherwise, it's too much of a distraction. And, as much as I love Deepak Chopra, I cannot listen to his meditations. It's too distracting for me to get through the meditation. And you got to find what works for you. Otherwise, you're just not going to do it, right? And I think that that's what people come to. They're like, I started, but I wasn't into it. Well, you got to find what works for you and roll with that. And that goes beyond meditation, right? So find what meditations work for you, whether that's healing frequencies, whether it is guided meditations. There's also walking meditations available. I know one of the things that I even considered a meditation that one of my guides taught me was just looking at a flame. You can candle gaze or fire gaze, however you want to phrase that. And that's a meditation itself. Leslie, shout out to Leslie if you're listening. She gave me a lava lamp recently. And I was like, I could see how this could be a meditation. And I used to be obsessed as a kid. I don't know what those things are called. It's like a globe with the like electricity things coming out of it. You probably know what I'm talking about, especially if you're an 80s baby. But I could see how even like staring into that globe or like looking at the static moving around it, that could be considered a meditation. Looking out the window at the rain, or just being still and just observing the space around you. These are all considered meditative states. So don't get in your head about what meditation has to look like. There's all kinds of variations. There's all kinds of frequencies, sound, music, or lack of music, however you want to do it. But find what works for you. Find what works for you. And then stick with that. Another one. This has been a recurring one that I've been sharing with all the people lately, is have some fucking audacity. I cannot tell you how much, some of my friends and I discuss some of the things that we see online, or the people, and you've seen them, you've probably experienced it too. Hell, like some people are probably even looking at me like, how dare she do that? I have way more experience than blah, 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 blah. I don't care. You got to have some audacity, because there are people out here that are doing less than you, or they have less knowledge or years of work in what you've studied. They're way, I don't want to put them on a spectrum of like they're beneath you, but they're just having audacity to get where they are. And, I think that like, oh my gosh, like, how is she doing this? And, you feel a way about it, but it's just, they just have the audacity to pursue what they're after. And they're just actually showing up in what they believe in and with clarity. And then it makes people attracted to what they have to offer. Whether or not you are repelled by it is another story, but they just have audacity. That's it. And I remember back during homecoming, one of my friends gave me and another friend, she had like tickets for the special Gamecock Club situation. So we had like a private area to go and watch and have a space to drink from. And it was nice. It was a nice setup. I was like, oh, this is fancy. Of course, I have fancy friends, right? And we are in this area enjoying our drinks, enjoying, we didn't even really we saw some of the game, but like the vibe around that was better than the game, I'll be honest. And then one of my friends called and she was like, hey, I'm here. And I was like, okay, well, shit, we're having a grand old time, in this VIP section, enjoying ourselves. And I was like, okay, well, I'll come get you. And there was just this understanding that we were just gonna make it happen. I don't know how, it just audacity. I do know how. So I go and get my friend. I use the parking pass that I was given because we didn't use the parking pass to get there. I give the parking pass to my friend. She parks. And then we walk back up to the stadium. And, one of the tickets had already been used, obviously. And the ticket woman or whatever was like, oh, this has already been used. And I was like, oh, I had to go and get my friend to park. Whatever it was, I finessed it somehow. And my friend also was like, yeah, you already saw us or something. Audacity. And we just walked straight through there, back up into the VIP drinking section that was available to us. And I was like, I see how people finesse their way through life. They just do this they do this all the time, and then it's fine. You just got to walk in like you already are doing what you're supposed to do. And then people don't question it, right? And I've seen it a lot on pranks and stuff, and people end up in these situations that you're like, how did they get there? Audacity. That's how. It was a good time, though. We all had a great time. And even my friend that gave me the tickets, when she saw pictures, she was like, I was wondering how all y'all were in there. And I was like, audacity. There's also, this kind of ties into having audacity, but another thing I wanted to mention with, I guess it's up there with audacity, is to stop making excuses. One of the things that people have been in my inbox about recently has been, they're putting some sort of content out or a product out, and it's not getting the traction that they want it to have. And I'm like, okay, well, what are you doing to show up to share who you are, And then some of it's like, oh, well, I'm a private person. And y'all, I'm a private person. I've even said this before. I'm a private person. And there's still things that I'm not going to share on here ever. And that one time I shared a little piece of information about a whole dating situation. Y'all are still in my inbox about that. So, which by the way, still, I'm never going to speak on it again. Like I told y'all I wouldn't. So stop asking. But you can still be a private person and have a public role. This is possible. And there are still people who have content, regardless of whether or not they're a private person. You can still put out products or services without showing your face. So that excuse isn't even usable, because there's several ways around what you're scared to do. And yeah, so you can still be a private person and still share your products, still share your services. And people want what's behind the service. They don't necessarily want the product. Like, I know I was talking to one of my friends the other day, and she was mentioning how she purchased some spices from some company, and she was like, her spices are really expensive, but like, I'm supporting her because it's her. And I was like, see, that's a prime example that people aren't necessarily buying these products for the products. They want to buy the product to support the person behind the product. And I think that the more people understand that, it's easier to realize, okay, I do need to be sharing more of what's behind this. And I know for me, when people ask, like, what is your why? What is your why? For a while, I was just like, like, what the fuck is my why? Everybody else has like these children to say is their why, or, some like dramatic story is what I hear oftentimes. And then I was like, well, what does my why look like? And my why was, or is, that I didn't have other people that look like me to ask these questions, to talk to about these things, to share this information that I'm sharing with you all. And I had this conversation with Brooke recently. A lot of my spiritual teachers were white women with very much like my mother, right? White women with blonde hair. So I came into this space understanding that there's people with questions and there's people looking for guidance from people that look like them, so that they, because we're all just mirrors of each other, right? And the more we can see ourselves in somebody else, it's easier to receive that information, I feel like, which I will say, and I had this conversation before, it's not always, and there might be mixed feelings about this because this is a weird space, but it's not always the messenger that you need to pay attention to, but the message. And I know that can get icky sometimes because, and I still, as crazy as Kanye has shown in his behaviors, and maybe I shouldn't use that word, it's a sensitive topic, but as unique and interesting as his behaviors have been, a lot of what he has shared, I'm like, oh, yeah, no, I agree with, and there's a lot of stuff that I don't agree with. But there's been many times that I'm like, oh, man, I just wish that the message was paid attention to more than the messenger. Because, he did give us some good hits. So before the messenger changed, we still had some good songs from him, right? So pay attention to that, because I know there's a book that I've been recommending lately, and it's Grant Cardone's 10X Rule. And I know he said some wild shit on, I think he said some things on Clubhouse, and then people were like, oh my God, he hates black people. But like, that book's a good book. So, check it out if you're into it. But it's one of those, like, I hate that was the messenger that was sharing that message, but it's a good message because it really did make me realize a lot of the times that we're like, I'm in these people's faces too much. I'm like sharing too much of my content, or maybe I'm posting too much about what I'm selling or what I'm offering, and you're not. And these people were explaining, you're probably not doing enough, and you should be calling people. You should be following up with people. You should be emailing, posting blah, blah, blah amounts of times. Like, you're not doing too much. And I was like, okay, that's good to hear. So, yeah. What else? So in saying also following up with the 10X rule is being consistent. One of the things that somebody said that they recognized in me was how consistent I was with showing up. And for me, I was like, ooh, like in my head, I wasn't showing up enough, but I think I make it I know I make it a point. I can't just go ghost on social media. I can, but I shouldn't. And so I make it a point to at least post once a week, at least. Then if I have that promise to myself, then I can do way more than that. But I need to have a baseline of something to work with. And have your baseline of what you're going to work with. And not just creating content, not just social media. Pick your things. And I was having this conversation with a friend recently about how she wanted to get back into some of her tarot card readings and how she had, missed getting in basically to her spiritual practices. And I was like, when we're going through the things, which, as I mentioned in one of my other episodes, a lot of us have been going through the things, but we have to remember to get back into those practices, to bring into our lives those rituals that we've created. So, for me, it's making sure I go outside with the dog for at least 30 minutes, but I have to go outside. It's starting my day with gratitude and thanking God. I also say the Reiki principles, usually when I'm in my kitchen. I don't know why it happens in the kitchen, but that's been a thing. But I say the Reiki principles every day. I send Reiki to things. I Reiki my water. There's just certain things that I do every single day, and I'm consistent with those. And by creating these consistent habits, you are creating this baseline, this foundation of things to fill your cup. I talk about filling your cups up. To fill your cup so that you can work from a space of overflow. Because when I get out of my routine, I need my Mondays off. I say that more often. But if I don't have those moments for myself, then I get icky about, helping other people or about sharing what I need to share. So I feel like if I get that way, then y'all probably get that way too, right? So you have to create these self-care rituals and these moments for yourself and these moments with God so that you can, continue to live your life and do what you need to do, because it's rough out here. So you need those moments, all right? Which also brings me to being intentional. Be intentional.
That sounds like some shit Sheanah says.
So I had this realization probably even on my way up here, and I'll probably speak about this again. But one of my friends, who's actually, I'm sure, listening to this, used to point out how often I was in black. And I was like, am I really? And then I looked at my wardrobe and I was like, oh God, yeah, okay, you might be right. There is a whole lot of black in there. And looking back, that phase of my life, I wasn't necessarily confident in myself. I wasn't confident in how I looked, how I walked. There was this understanding, yeah, I'm pretty, but there wasn't this, I don't like using that term understanding because that's just not my jam, but there wasn't that inner knowing yet. I'd heard it from other people, but I didn't believe it enough. They're all lying. They don't mean that. So once I had this awareness about there not being anything wrong with me, then I realized how much my wardrobe changed, how much more color I added to it. And then when I think about it with the knowledge I have now about, the different chakras and energy centers and the colors associated with all of them, then I'm like, oh, so I was always in black for this protection. And it was also, this idea of being seen. I wasn't necessarily going to be seen as much, which that's a joke because I have big curly hair. But if I just wore black all the time, then it wasn't going to draw as much attention as wearing all the colors, right? So the more I started incorporating colors into my everyday wear and, the way I was feeling, I was like, oh, okay, this is how I'm supposed to be living. So be intentional with, the clothes that you're wearing, the colors that you're choosing to wear, especially depending on where you're going. And we think about the tradition of wearing black to funerals, and then I wonder, should we all just be wearing white instead? I don't know. So I got mixed feelings about that. I got mixed feelings about funerals in general, but that's a whole nother episode, I'm sure. But the colors that we wear, really can bring out some of the feelings that we need to feel. When I think there was some study that was done, there was some study done about the specific red nail polish that women were wearing, and it was making them more money. I was like, it's a red nail polish, but red root, that is foundation, that is safety, security. So it makes sense that those went together. I do have low-key a small conspiracy theory in my head that the reason money is green is to get to our hearts as well, because heart chakra is green. But I don't feel like I'm going to get into conspiracies today. But that's just a thought. Offhanded topic. No, I guess it was related. But anyway, wear the colors that you need to wear. If you are feeling like you're not as confident as you could be, wear some more yellow. Tap into that solar plexus, or red, because then you're safe to be seen. You're safe to do what you want to do and be out there without that like fear, because red is safety, security, root chakra. So wear more red for those things, but really look into that and see what aligns with how you want to feel and how you can move with that. And another way that I'd been a lot more intentional, and I share it with you all the time, is paying attention to the moon cycles. And I know for me, during new moons, it's a time to set new intentions and create new things. And at full moons, it's a time to let that shit go. So I will be having some Reiki events again around the moons. But again, all that information will be in the show notes, so pay attention. Because I do think that there's still people, I don't know how many people are listening now that are newer listeners that just like jumped on board when you saw the relaunch. I appreciate you. Hey, welcome. But I did used to do those things around the new and full moons. And then I'd been asked to do them at the park recently. But the way the weather's been set up, not really sure when we're doing park things again. It's got to be like a sweet spot, because it's been 90 degrees at like 9 a.m. So I'll have those at the park again at some point, but I don't know when that's going to happen. But just be on the lookout for new and full moon things with that. But there's even times, and I learned some of this from Brooke Who Knows the Things, there's times that you should pay attention to when you can cut your hair based on the moon cycle. And I know I've made posts about this, to pay attention to, the good times to do a detox or a cleanse based on moon cycles. And I had a talk with a homeboy at some point, and he had a question about moon cycles and menstrual cycles. And I was like, yeah, duh. I know you're not a woman, but yeah, those go hand in hand. I said, there's an app, and I use this app myself, Stardust. There's this app that links your menstrual cycle with the moon cycles, and it calls you different color witches based on what moon cycle your cycle comes on. So I think that's really, really fascinating. But I was even explaining to him, if you look at everything that takes place during full moons, psychiatric patients are increased. There's just different ridiculous things happening in the hospital. Because remember, I used to work at the hospital in registration, and it used to be a shit show. And this is way before I even knew about moon cycles. And when we had a bunch of labor and delivery patients, we had a bunch of psychiatric admissions, and just like a whole bunch of like EMS calls all night. I was like, it's a full moon, isn't it? And every single time it was. And I do remember reading at some point, they mentioned that a lot of times things get chaotic within people's brains around full moons, because parasites are rampant in your body, because the full moon kind of aggravates them. So that could be a thing. But there's, a list of other reasons that these things can be occurring too. And what I had mentioned to my homeboy is like, if we're mostly made of water, and I've said this before, even in my Reiki pitches, if I can Reiki water and you can taste the difference, and we're mostly made of water, what do you think is taking in our place when that healing occurs? So if we're mostly made of water, and you see how the moons affect the tides, doesn't it make sense that we're affected by the moon cycles as well? So as I'm saying this, it is a Scorpio moon. And I feel like that needs to be mentioned, because I'm talking about all things occult. And this feels very on brand for me right now. So let me just tap my shoulder, pat my back, all that stuff, because I'm in my element, in my flow. Anyway, be intentional. You can get with the moon cycles, you can get with colors, you can, I want to be in a space where I'm moving so intentionally that if I do fuck up, then people are going to be like, she meant to do that. She meant to do that. And if I didn't, like, I still want it, like, she probably meant to do that. So I want to be moving that much more intentional through my life, with my career, with the way I plan my days even. And the more I get in touch with those things, the more I'm like, yeah, this is how it's supposed to be done. I see why that 9 to 5 life did not work. But outside of moon cycles and colors, even, I was having a conversation about the days of the week with somebody recently, and how, I talk about Thursdays are for expansion all the time. And Thursdays are the day that my podcast episode comes out, because I want that association with the podcast. I want people to, realize that they're expanding their minds and their hearts when they listen to this information. So, and again, I mentioned this recently. If you already know your human design and you have a defined throat center, make sure you are using your voice, because the same way I'm just here having a conversation and sharing the things that are on my mind, there's people listening to that and recognizing similarities or differences even, but there's something about hearing it from me that activates people, or activates, a thought change, or activates something within them that makes them feel like I feel like home. There's something within me that makes people comfortable to listen to what I have to say, because they recognize some familiarity with my message, or even with my energy, right? So you have to make sure you're using your voice, because there's people that need to hear what you have to say just because it's you that says it, right? Right, okay. The other thing I talk about all the time, some more shit Sheanah says, every single episode I say to drink your water. Let me drink some damn water myself, because I'm talking a lot today. Drink your water. Please drink your water. And I was listening to the old episode, and apparently I had gone to the nail salon, and the woman doing my nails said she was addicted to Mountain Dew. I haven't had that experience again yet, so thank goodness. But please drink your water. Again, just as I mentioned, we're mostly made of water, and the moon cycles affect us. So knowing that information, you want to be hydrated. There's a whole different list of reasons to be hydrated as well. Like, if you're already listening, you should know these things, right? I'm not telling you new information, but maybe it's a reminder, because maybe you're listening right now and need to go get some damn water. Drink your water, please. Meditate and hydrate. Write that shit down. Write that shit down. And I will probably say this for as long as I live, because it is really what has created so much momentum in my own life, and what has helped me see the magic that happens when we do write down our intentions. And I've spoken before about this book called Big Magic, and how you may have this thought in your head. You have all of these ideas, the whole way that you've got this plan set up. Maybe it's an invention, maybe it's a service, whatever it is. You have this idea of how it's going to be created, how it's going to be delivered. You probably even have a visual image of what exactly this looks like. And then somebody comes around and steals your idea, right? And it's not that they stole it, it's you didn't act on it quick enough. But I feel like when you start writing these things down, I know a large part of what happens in the hesitation in writing it down is like, how is that going to happen? Like, I know that this is the goal, but how the fuck am I going to make this happen? And that's where the work that I do comes in, because I've explained to a client recently, and it's interesting when I do get these clients that are very logical thinkers, because I get a handful of them sometimes. I get I don't want to say non-believers, because there's something in their curiosity that's like, okay, maybe what she's talking about, maybe there's something to it. So the work that I do, it doesn't make sense. There's oftentimes no logical explanation for how it works the way it works. There's a lot of magic and mystery in what I do and the life that I've lived. There's times that I look back that I'm like, how the fuck did that happen? And a lot of times I wrote it down. Or, I think we get tied up in, if you write it down, again, we can't worry about how it'll happen, but even when you don't worry about how it happens, like the way it happens is still like, whoa, what the fuck? I never saw it happening that way. So even the expectations that you have of this desire or wish that you have, it's always delivered even greater than what you could have imagined or what you could have like written down word for word. It's always like a razzle dazzle of, but wait, there's more. And that's the field that I work in. That's the work that I do, is that learning that there is so much magic and mystery in our everyday lives, in our like everyday just moments of stillness. There's magic and mystery in that too, which I have my bullet points written down in a different order, but it makes sense to bring this up right now, which brings me back to my next point of shit Sheanah says. Say perhaps to drugs.
That sounds like some shit Sheanah says.
And before all y'all clip this and take this out of context, let me give some additional details, because there is a place in Oregon, and I want to talk about that place, because when I say perhaps to drugs, y'all know what I'm talking about. I hope you know what I'm talking about at this point. Mushrooms and cannabis. There's a sprinkle of some other helpful ones, which I'll share in a moment. But I am not talking about meth or coke. I'm talking about the natural ones. I'm talking about the ones that have been used by indigenous cultures for as far as the world has been around. I'm talking about those ones, not the ones created in the garage. However, apparently there's a place in Oregon, what's it called? The Eugene Psychedelic Integrative Center. And they recently legalized psilocybin use, or retreat centers or treatment centers, something along those lines. And they listed the prices for the psilocybin treatment that they have available. And I remember when I saw these prices, my mouth dropped and I rolled my eyes, sucked my teeth, did all the things, because I was like, this is just like the start of what's going to take place with, by the time the government gets a hold of legalizing this and making it available in capsules to be prescribed by your physician, by Big Pharma. You already know where I'm going with this. But this place, the Eugene Psychedelic Integrative Center, EPIC is what it's called. They have, let me list some of these prices because it's fucking ridiculous. In order to have a microdose, which a microdose is considered like 0.1 to 0.4, a microdose. And when I explain a microdose to people, I think a lot of people, whenever they hear me say that I do shrooms or try shrooms sometimes, they envision the wall melting. They immediately go there. And a lot of that is, because that's what TV made you believe forever ago. Along with, melting into the couch like a puddle. Because you remember This Is Your Brain on Drugs, those videos? Yeah. So there was a whole bunch of stuff that we already believed in our heads that was pretend. And the melting walls is one of them. But that's usually acid, by the way, which I don't think I want to do acid. I don't think that's on my to-do list. But a microdose is not going to have that experience. A microdose is a very subtle situation, all right? It's very much what I call a mood enhancer. It makes colors a little brighter. It makes communication a little easier. And that's why I do think that psilocybin-assisted therapy is a great way to go, because I could only imagine how much more you would be opening up to your therapist in that treatment, because I think that the way your neural pathways are opening up when psilocybin does the things in your brain, I think it just helps connect the dots easier for you to communicate your thoughts and express yourself a little easier. Anyway, just a hunch. But a microdose, what I just explained, subtle mood enhancer, colors may just look a little brighter. It's not grand. It's just a little Yeah, I can feel that. It's just that. Just that, a microdose. $500. $500. And a microdose is not worth $500. I will tell you that right now. You can get a microdose probably, I'm saying probably allegedly, right? Because, for like less than $4, right? You can do that for less than $4. Not $500 for a microdose. Don't do that. Please don't do that. And then if you go with a group, the group price for a microdose is $300, which is still fucking ridiculous. I think it's called a lower dose, 0.8 is $800. And then a high dose, a high dose is what I would consider, what I like to call a trippy trip. The high dose is what I took back in 2020, where I saw the sky breathing. That was 4 grams. $3,500. $3,500 for a trippy trip. And a trippy trip lasts about 6 hours. $3,500. I know I said say perhaps to drugs, but don't say perhaps to drugs at this place, please. I don't want to say it's a joke, because clearly these prices are listed on their website. It is not a joke. This is real. But this also lets me see what's going to be taking place, over the next few years outside of this outside of this specific place, I can see the way other treatment centers are going to be like running with this. And it makes me feel icky. I don't like that. Go find you a healer, go find a shaman, go find somebody that practices this kind of work. There are integrative medicine coaches, which, by the way, one of my listeners was mentioning that she started paying attention to me talking about psychedelics, and she went and took a whole course on becoming a psychedelic integrative coach. So, y'all, I know, especially Black people, I know that they're like, shut up about shrooms, but say perhaps. Say perhaps. Back to the other things. No, wait, before I get back to that, because you're going to keep seeing these things come up anyway. I mentioned in one of my other podcasts that one of my clients had even tried ketamine therapy. And I was looking up the difference between MDMA and ketamine. There are some similarities, but MDMA therapy is becoming a thing now too. And MDMA apparently is really good to help treat PTSD. So I guess I'm assuming ketamine treatments do that as well. However, what I'm seeing in these treatments with these specific medicines is that it's very clinical. It's very westernized, right? It's very like, I'm going to get this needle injected to get this medicine, and then I'm leaving, right? But I think that a lot of the medicine and some of these treatments, which I mentioned, like when I'm talking about psychedelic therapies, a lot of the medicine that's behind this is the integration of it. It's the discussing what's going on at the root to make you feel the things that you feel. So I feel like having these MDMA treatment centers and ketamine treatment centers, like, yay, people are seeking alternative options, but I really do think that the medicine is in the integration and in the work behind just taking the actual medicine, right? And I feel like I've spoken about that a lot. A lot of my work is, okay, you've done all of this. Now, how do you integrate it all? How do you actually live this way? How do you actually embody the work that you've already been doing? So I still feel icky about those, I will say, just because I feel like if we're going to have MDMA treatment centers and ketamine treatment centers, then maybe they need to have coaches along with this, not just, here's your medicine. I almost feel like it's getting treated like chemo, right? And that just, again, that feels icky, because even that, I feel like you shouldn't just be having chemo. There's got to be some additional support with these medicines. And I think we've, for a long time taken that approach to just give people a pill to make things better. But the medicine is, okay, but why are you taking that pill, right? Could you go without taking the pill? and then extract from that. If you can go without taking the pill, what does that look like? Or what does it look like if you don't take that pill? And if that doesn't look very nice, what work can you do to stop taking that pill? And it just keeps cycling more and more with that information. But a lot of the medicine is taken away from the medicine in the Western world because the medicine is getting to the root, right? But we don't get to the root in the Western world. We just put Band-Aids on things. Y'all know I talk about that all day, so I'm not even going to get into that anymore today. That's enough of that one. Anyway, say perhaps to drugs. Another shit Sheanah says. And I kind of covered this on the last one, but this is one that I can often repeat because I think we need to hear it a lot. Is there is nothing wrong with you. And it's refreshing now to see a lot of these celebrities that are deciding to take out their fillers and deciding to, maybe I don't need those breast implants anymore. And I feel like a lot of that was the pandemic. People had way too much time to think. And so I am grateful for that. But we'd been conditioned to believe that there's something wrong with our figures, or there's something wrong with the way we move or the way we navigate the things that we navigate. But I had this conversation with a friend recently. Actually, I did a human design reading for, and the good thing about, or one of the good things that I enjoy about human design, and a lot of this ties in with astrology as well, but when you learn this information about yourself, it just helps you learn how to navigate, right? And this friend that I was talking to, when I was explaining something in her human design, she was like, okay, well, I don't remember how she phrased it per se, but it was kind of like, what can I do to fix that? And I was like, whoa. Nothing needs fixing. You just have this information now of how you move and why you move this way, right? So, and there are some things within people that, yes, we can all work on things, right? But knowing how you move and why you move that way, whether it's the conditioning you've received over the years or, trauma that has happened or trauma that it's been passed down, those things. It's understanding, okay, I have this information, but how do I move from here? And I feel like, knowing that there's nothing wrong with you helps us understand that, okay, I have this, this, and this. Okay, what do I do with that? How do I move from here? And I'd love that human design taught me that, because it was very much like, okay, I know that I have this information. I know I move this certain way, or people ask me these questions, but does that give me the authority to speak about it more? And then it was like, yeah, you can do that. You just needed to allow yourself. And then seeing that in my human design, I was like, oh, this makes sense. So there's nothing wrong with you. And I think that learning a lot of these other, I like to call them maps, human design, astrology. There's even one that I post sometimes, Bazi and Qimen, which is Chinese metaphysics. Knowing these maps, these guides, chakra centers, all the maps, I call them maps. Knowing where you have imbalances or blockages just helps you navigate what you need to do to correct something or tweak something. Let me not say correct, tweak. Because usually things just need a little tweaking to create change and transformation. It's just a little tweak that goes a long way over the years. So let me not even say over the years, over minutes sometimes, just some tweaks. And I even had this convo the other day, which can bring me to my next point. Watch your words. Watch your words. And I've mentioned this before. If I see somebody, on social media, maybe they're on their story, maybe they are posting it on the new threads or on Twitter, whatever the case. But if I love you and I see you say some shit that I'm like, I'm going to tell you to watch your words. And I think one of the things that really helped me, and this was a convo I was having with my friend the other day, was, and for those, I'm sure a lot of the people listening listen to Abraham Hicks or have listened to Abraham Hicks. And one of the phrases that Abraham Hicks would use was, instead of saying the path of least resistance, was the path of most allowance. And I think for me, the way I navigate, my mindfulness and what I've been teaching a lot of my clients and students and you guys that are listening is make sure when you speak that your words feel light.
What do you mean by that?
And I mean, like, very much like a toddler, and I remember seeing a post about this, the thing that we admire about toddlers is if they don't want something anymore, they just drop it, right? And I feel that way about words. Like, if there's certain things you don't want anymore, and maybe it's an emotion, maybe it's something that you keep pulling into your life, then you don't speak on it. You just drop it, right? Just drop it, change it. And if you don't know how to drop it, then get assistance dropping it. And if you don't know how to get the assistance to drop it, like, choose another way to hold it. That's the best way to put it. But like, I know whenever I say certain words or certain phrases, if they feel heavy as I'm saying it, then I can feel it. I can feel the energy as I'm expressing it then. So I find ways to navigate. How can I make that sound lighter? How can I make that feel lighter? So as you're choosing your words, as you're watching your words, make them feel lighter, however that looks for you. And I remember when I had my relaunch party here, one of the guests coming, she'd had a shit day in the morning. And she had messaged me, this event wasn't taking place till that evening. And she had messaged me at like noon and was like, yeah, I'm not going to make it. It's been a shit morning. And I was like, it was a shit morning. I was like, you still got several hours to get your life together before then. And the company that's going to be around you is going to lift your spirits anyway. Like, you already know this. You already know that the company that we're going to have in here is going to be a good time. And she was like, you're absolutely right. I'm a rally. But that's what I mean. Like, when I'm saying watch your words, I mean all day. And it takes practice and it takes some discipline and diligence. But the more you can, again, tweak these things, the better you're going to see things turn out for you. And, one of the things that I hate using, and I mention it all the time, is the word trying. And I will say, there's that exception of try this out. Or there's that little exception. There's that fine print that's allowed. But I talk about it all the time, like Yoda, do or do not. There is no try. And again, when I mention like the way words feel light or heavy, the word trying, I don't know that it feels light or heavy, but it feels still. Trying doesn't feel like action. Trying just feels like an in-between. I don't even say still. Trying just feels like stagnant energy. It's not moving. So make them lighter and give them the momentum that you want them to have. And another thing with watching your words that really helped me was, remove the absolutes from your life. So when people, just like I mentioned, the human design reading I had, and when I talk about open and defined centers, and people are like, oh, is that good or bad? And I'm like, no, it just is. And, when we think about these things on a spectrum, there's exceptions with saying good and bad. Don't get me into that whole tailspin today. But, one of the teachers that I had that really helped me remove that judgment was just to call things interesting. So instead of labeling it as good or bad, label it interesting, because it removes the judgment and it helps you, again, just like the meditation practice, it helps you observe what's happening, or why are you labeling it good or bad, and why does that emotion feel good or bad, those kind of things. So remove the absolutes, stop saying trying. The other one that I can't stand to hear is I don't know. And thank goodness I had a human design coach that shared that with me, because I was doing it. And now when I hear it, I'm like, ugh. But when we say I don't know, it removes the ability for that information to come to us. So if we're creating the life that we want, if we're navigating the way that we want to, and we say, I don't know, then the information that we're looking for isn't going to come to us. So one of the things that teacher taught me was, if I did know the answer, what would it be? Another way you could shift that is, I'm open to receiving the possibilities, and believe in that possibility, because I don't know is just, it's an absolute. It's a complete sentence. It's one of those things. So be open to shifting that perspective. And instead of saying, I don't know, when you do say, I don't know, because it's going to happen a little bit still, again, I want you to see that Samuel L. Jackson face where he's like, like mean mugging at the person that's talking to him, because you're not supposed to be doing that anymore. Stop doing it. What else? Celebrate your wins. Celebrate your wins. There's still moments that, of course, because I'm this, I want to say it's because I'm a Capricorn. I don't know where these standards came from that I've created for myself sometimes, but I think a lot of us do it. Like, we have these expectations and these standards, and they're ridiculously high. And I don't know what we're basing it off of, but we forget to celebrate like the buildup of some of the things taking place. I mean, me even being in here right now, this is a big win. This has taken time, but look how much time it's taken. And then you see these moments of these wins, and then it just keeps getting better. The more that you pause and observe those wins, the more wins that'll come to you. The more that you see, damn, I did that, then the bigger the celebrations will get. And like, I am living proof of that. And I know I had one of my listeners say like that really helped her, take time to notice her wins. And I realized, especially women, like how often we don't just pause and look at what we've done and the impact that we may have on our own friends or families or community. And that's a win in itself. And I think, there's other wins that we overlook as well. Sometimes the win is getting out the bed. Sometimes the win is, making a phone call that you were avoiding. Sometimes the win is expressing a truth that you didn't know needed expressing. And those wins are going to look different all the time, but you've got to take a moment and celebrate those, because I know like my ADHD brain, when there's moments that like, I'm like, okay, I know I need to do A, B, and C. Like, I have got to do this thing. I cannot put it off anymore. I've got to do this. And then, it takes like 10 minutes to do. Don't get me started. And then you accomplish it and you're like, damn, I did that. And like, I have to like say to myself, like a big kid, like, you did that, good job. And I know it sounds absolutely ridiculous, but it's like you're applauding and making your inner child proud, or younger you proud, for like accomplishing these, I'm saying they're small tasks, but they build up. So celebrate your wins, however those look. On to another shit Sheanah says. Figure out what works for you and roll with that. Figure it out and roll with that. And I kind of mentioned this earlier with, creating your self-care rituals, or creating your rituals throughout the day of what you need to do to make sure you have this momentum or to have this routine in your life. And I know for me, I can't always have routine. It needs to be switched up, but there's got to be the baseline, right? There's got to be my non-negotiables. Like, Sheanah, you have to do these every single day. Non-negotiable. But in saying find what works for you and roll with it, you also have to realize like how that needs to be molded and adjusted over time too, right? So maybe what's working for you isn't working anymore. And you have to be open to how that looks changing. And I can speak about this for, food, for example. And I know I mentioned before, I'm not into labeling things as like diets or, going behind those certain fad diets, I guess. But like I am into more intuitive eating. You got to find what works for you, whether it's, vegan or vegetarian, or maybe it's all the things and it's just what your body enjoys. But if your body no longer enjoys those things, and you'll know, because but it's time to switch it up. So that's no longer working for you. So what does that look like? And how does that look? And how can you make these changes? Or again, how can you tweak these little things to find what does work for you so you can roll with that? And I have been seeing, and I think this is going to just always be the thing because it's the diet situation. Like I feel like a lot of the people that were vegan or plant-based are, coming back to eating other things. But, some people go with their blood type. Some people just go and see a nutritionist and actually see what works for them and build a plan from there. Like there are so many options for that. And even outside of diet and food things, find what works for you career-wise. Find what works for you communication-wise. God, that's a big one. And I know for me, like, I guess I underestimated this lesson at some point, but having my dog Lennox definitely taught me a whole nother level of communication. And it's not that like he taught me how to communicate with dogs per se, but it was the minute I understood how he communicated, it made it that much easier to communicate with him and do things that, like let me ask him to do this. And then there was this trust. So when you learn communication styles with pets or people, which by the way, that Mercury replacement, if you can get that Mercury replacement, then yes. But when you learn communication styles, it takes away so much of the chaotic mind that you may be having about approaching things because, like some people don't want to talk about the things and some people want to address it right then and there, right? So learning communication styles, learning what works for you, learning what's not going to work for you is only going to help you excel. But you got to find what works and stick with that. For me, I'm not a grand rising person. I'm not going to grand rising. And I'm also not going to use the N word. These aren't the things that I can roll with. I do say the N word and when I'm singing down bottom, I do say it then, but that's the only song I sing it to because I feel like I can flow with that one. The rest might be questionable when I say it because of the way I sound. So I just feel like even though I'm the color I am, I don't feel like I need to be using the N word. So I just don't. I don't. I think that's it. I think I could tell you all day the shit Sheanah says because a lot goes on in here all the time. But I think y'all have had enough today. I'm here to share more of these again in the future. We'll see what another shit Sheanah Says looks like. But again, when I've been sharing with you guys some of the behind the scenes stuff of even some of the marketing things that I've learned over the years, and people need to hear things 7 times. So I could probably have the same shit Sheanah Says on every episode, and somebody will still say, "Damn, I didn't hear that I didn't hear that the first time. Do it again." So 7 times. Anyway, thank you for tuning in. Again, check the show notes for all up-to-date information. And tune in every Thursday where I will be on YouTube and your favorite streaming platform. Remember to meditate and hydrate. Bye. Thanks for tuning in to Who You Callin' Holistic. Be sure to like, subscribe, and share. You can find me and all my services on Sheanah.com. That's SheanAH.